Hello and welcome to The Magic in You, where I am here with Elie Barnes, who is a professional psychic and medium working in New Orleans, and that's in the US. Elie is also a third degree Alexandrian High Priestess who manages an Alexandrian coven in New Orleans. And she's also a biodynamic herb farmer, growing some 120 odd traditional magical herbs on her property. And from these plants, she makes magical products, including pocket fetishes, dream pillows, magical planetary blends, and so on. So there's so much to talk about with Elie because she has studied philosophy and comparative religion in her college and basically has devoted her life, and that's some 60 years. I want to give you your age away, Elie, but all of your life basically has been devoted to occult material. She specializes in the Western mystery traditions, Hermetic studies, the Kabbalistic studies, witchcraft, of course, herbalism. And I think I might just bring you on the screen now, Elie, because there's just so much more we can talk about in our introduction. So welcome to The Magic in You.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Frances. It's an honor to be with you. We know we're friends. We love each other already, and it's really exciting to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, welcome. So, being a natural born psychic, I thought we might just sort of start there because this is part of the early steps in your magical journey, which basically started from the time I guess you popped out of the womb. So, what was it like, and how did that sort of shape you through, well, even into modern day, the interests is in particular into your magical studies? How did your psychic abilities then shape and lead into your magical studies?
Well, it's really probably the most important thing. And I remind people who want to study psychic development and who feel like they don't have any real talent, they weren't born with talent. I say, you don't know. When you're a tiny, tiny child, all you have in your mind is your own mind and what you're experiencing and seeing and hearing. And you don't have references that say other people do it this way or some people don't see anything at all. So I'm my mother's side of the family are all Scottish from the Isle of Mull, and her mother was psychic, and her grandmother was a visual psychic. I mean, I know it was talked about in my family that there were stories passed down about these two women. My mother is not, she doesn't say she's psychic, but actually, when you started to talk to her, and her name is Diana, by the way, named Diana by her mother. So I said, well, that's kind of a clue, isn't it? She's psychic too. She is very intuitive. So my case was extreme. I had very powerful visual and auditory experiences. It turns out that I was I was in Central Florida, but I was living in a house that was surrounded by Indian mounds. So what I was first seeing were probably spirits of the native people that lived there a couple hundred years before I did, but I had no references. I didn't know who these terrifying people were. I had unfortunately, a lot of scary visions of fires, fire on water, collapsing buildings, being chased, and weird animal things, things in my closet. And so I just was really in a state of really bad fear. So my parents started to try to figure out what was wrong with me. They took me to doctors and psychologists. They couldn't really figure it out. They said, she's just weird, she's going to have to go in some sort of an institution. And then my grandmother took me to an old psychic and said, what do you think about this kid? And the psychic said that this is her story, that Elie reincarnated too fast. She rushed through the steps and she's not settled down yet. So we can expect to see this kind of weird psychic stuff probably until she's like 5 or 6. And I just credit my family. I think they said, okay, well, we'll try to help her with it instead of it's bad, it's wrong, you have to be punished. So the first things that came to me and why I still worship the Egyptian, the Greek, and the Roman god forms, they came to me. I saw them. I drew them. Your little kid stick drawings. I drew 2 guys with wings in the sun. I mean, this is Icarus and Daedalus flying towards the sun. I was like 4. There's no way I could have known that, you know? So my parents were like, okay, she's getting something from somewhere. I was fascinated with ancient Egypt. So I'm glad I got support because it didn't turn off. I continued to be interested in my psychic ability. Probably the first thing I noticed that I could read minds. And I figured out that if I go sit next to the teacher and ask them, oh, is this question right? Is this the way you know, da da da? And then they would think of the answer. And of course I would be like, oh, thank you so much for helping me. And I'd toddle off and write down what I read. And so, you know, I did take advantage of it when I was in school. And I knew which boys liked me and which ones didn't. That was pretty quick for me to be able to find out. But because my parents supported me, my grandparents, it wasn't shut off. And then my fascination just was growing. There's no way you can have that kind of experience and not wonder why. Why is it this way? It opened up the world to me to understand that the cosmos is much more elaborate than we think it is. And I just started reading mythology. I started asking questions to friends of my grandparents. They were esoteric Christians, and they were interested in, like, my grandmother studied Edgar Cayce. You remember the old Jane Roberts Seth materials where she was one of the first channeling women or people, and she wrote what Seth said. Those came out in, I guess, the 60s and 70s. Carlos Castaneda, I devoured all of his Don Juan books. You know, that was my middle school reading material. So it just was me. It was just the truth of me. It took me quite a while to realize that other people didn't have the same perceptions I did. And that's what I tell all my students who are studying psychic development. You don't know. You were a little kid. You were probably more psychic than you thought you were. You just didn't notice it compared to others. So I try to get them to go back and do some inner child work, and then teach some door opening path workings, and get your spirit guides to come in, and your inner plane teachers to show up, and then you'll be off to the races. You'll figure out how you need to do it. But philosophy in college, I kept studying metaphysical subjects, every type. I don't want to say there's nothing in the occult I haven't at least read about. I don't obviously practice it all. But it's my life. It's your life. We're devoted to it. We're devoted to the gods. I cannot live a life that doesn't have the idea of the goddess. I just can't do it, you know? And I was a rebel. I got in a little bit of trouble with some of the more traditional Christian people. I was not made to go to church. My parents were more secular, and I wasn't drawn to it, really. I wanted to go to the woods. We had a lot of, you know, family property. My uncles had land, and so we went there on the weekends all the time as kids, the cousins, and that was my church, right? Wonderful. So it's just the truth. It's just the truth of it, you know, weird wiring. And then I wasn't shut down by my world. They allowed me and supported me to keep doing what I was interested in.
And here you are. Wonderful. And here you are today, a professional psychic and all-round very knowledgeable person on all areas of esoteric and occult material, which really, when we start walking this path, we'll start getting interested. I think this is also probably the overwhelm these days, because even back when I was studying, we were limited to books and going to the library, or even what our local bookshop had. These days, everything's on the internet. So it's just like, and it's little bits and pieces of everything that you then have to ascertain as to what is bona fide, what's actual correct.
You're right.
And not. But this also led you into your interest in herbs, and you also grow magical herbs. So maybe for our audience who's not familiar with why it's important when you talk about herbs, just normal herbs like for cooking herbs, and then we've got magical herbs. Firstly, what's the difference, and why, when I'm thinking about, say, the home gardener or the beginner witch, or people who are starting to get interested in magical herbs, why can you go down to the supermarket and pick the thyme or the basil off the shelf? Or is it better to, these are common herbs that you can go and grow yourself. Is there a difference? And if there is, why?
Well, there is a difference, I think, in use. but like fundamentally, and I did a presentation on this for WitchCon, and you taught at WitchCon also. I called mine Planets and Plants, because there's the old style in magic, law of correspondences and the doctrine of signatures, which said everything is related to everything else by likeness, by similarity. So my basic, to take it back to my Rudolf Steiner studies with the plant world and the animal world are existing on the earth plane along with humans. We are in the same strata vibrationally on the earth. The stones, the plants, the animals, and us are the terrestrial plane. We have the chthonic, which is the roots, the underground things, maybe we could say our own subconscious. And we have the celestial, which is the stars and the things above us, what we see above. So I just feel that early humans would have naturally began to know and communicate and feel the energies and the communications of all of these worlds, the plants, the stones, and the animals. We would have picked up feelings, hints, intuitions. And of course, we know we use them for everything. Early man had, what were our resources? Plants, rocks, animal parts. I mean, that was it. We had nothing. We had nothing to do anything with except what was in the natural world. So I just think we probably figured out, we watched animals eat plants probably first. We watched them all eat the fruit that had rotten and turned to alcohol, and how crazy the animals got when they did that. We watched the mushroom eater monkeys and realized that was a long day. If you're going to eat mushrooms, you got to have a nap and be ready for a long day. So I think we watched and got, ideas about what plants did to the animals. And then I think we would have just started, well, the story of ayahuasca. These are two, you have to make the tea with these two distinct plants in the Amazon that are completely apart from each other, unrelated to each other, but they are the whatever the one plant is that turns on the hallucinogenic properties. The other plant suppresses the hormone that blocks that. They have to be taken together to be ayahuasca. And the theory is that the plants told humans, you need both of us. That's what the myth about it says in the, Peruvian mythos, that the plants talked to the shamans and said, if you're going to use us, you have to put us together this way. I think plants talk. Have you seen some of the studies that put microphones on plants and they're kind of enlarging the sound, and we're hearing all this music and buzzing and communication? So yes, you can go to the grocery store and get basil and thyme and bring it home and cook with it, but save a little bit of it out and just put it on a little paper towel and then fold it up and take it to bed with you. Put it in your pillowcase. Tell the plant, thank you so much. I love you. You're beautiful. Thank you for your service. I say to every plant in my garden, thank you for your service, because I really grow through a biodynamic method, and which is Rudolf Steiner's method, and have relationships with my plants. They are my friends. They are my allies. We work together. I learn from them every day. So I thank the plant. You're beautiful. You did good. Thank you for your service. Put it in my pillow and see what I get from it. And I write things down. I'm a big journaler, because you want to go back and read what, your common themes that you pick up on. I don't really distinguish. The thing I talked about in my class was the chemical constituents are really the key to how a plant is composed magically, and the flavor profile and the smell profile. So once you study medical herbalism, you will understand the constituent chemicals, and then you will know, is it a abortive? Is it an anti-inflammatory? Is it a cooling or heating herb? And very often its use in cooking mimics or medicine mimics what it would do magically. And then what would we do with the plant? What are the first little artifacts we find in early man, 30, 40,000 years ago? The little pouch, the little shaman bag that has the herbs, the stone, the animal bone in it, just like we make today, right? Our little pocket fetishes. So they must have thought using the plant and carrying it on you and having it around you was some sort of a influence. So I think, I don't know the whole answer about it, but I think that plants are part of our lives. They're incredibly important. We unfortunately mistreat them and overlook their true beautiful qualities. And they were probably some of our first teachers.
Oh, definitely. Yes, yes.
I
And
mean, you're a gardener. Don't you go out some mornings and you actually hear the plants chattering with each other, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh God, here she comes!" Right, and then they're all looking great, and then you say, "Oh, my darlings, I love you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Carry on. I'm so happy you're talking with each other." And then the little sounds start coming back, and the bees start buzzing again, and the birds start chirping. I mean, they're watching us. They're watching us, Frances. Don't you think?
right, they certainly are. And I think this is when I think that sometimes us humans have got too hedonistic. We think the world revolves around just for us and no one
Right.
else or nothing else really matters. And we're seeing that, in our cities now with the rising of temperatures because our new subdivisions don't have trees, don't have plants. No one has
Right.
gardens
Right.
anymore. And
Right.
we've forgotten just how important, even just for our own sanity, really, we
Yes.
need this interconnection. It's like we're connecting ourselves off from our source more and more, which is another rabbit hole I'm quite sure we can dive right down. But I don't really want to today because I want to sort of talk more about you and your work. And you've had such a diverse background in the occult arts and all the esoteric teachings and things like that. And now you've ended up, I don't know if you've ended, but at this current point in time, you're an Alexandrian high priestess. So what was the drawing to the Alexandrian tradition of witchcraft? Because there are so many traditions and styles these days. You could just be an eclectic. Everybody seems to like being eclectic. And also living in New Orleans, was there ever a possibility of maybe going down the conjuring or voodoo path? That's
Right. Right.
also very influential there. So, but why was the Alexandrian tradition something that you were drawn to?
Well, probably the bigger answer is that it was available to me, which is rare. The Gardnerian and Alexandrian witchcraft traditions, as you know, are coven based and they are initiatory. It's not eclectic. You cannot say, I'm an Alexandrian or I'm a Gardnerian. Poof, this is what I am, this is what I do. You must be initiated by a high priest or high priestess, depending on your gender, and you must work in a coven in those traditions. So when I did study really widely as a younger person, but I didn't really pull it all together. I didn't know how it all pulled together until I joined the Servants of the Light School in the UK, run by Dolores Ashcroft Novicki. It's now changed and it's run by Stephen Critchley, Dr. Stephen Critchley, who is a spiritualist minister and also worked in Patricia Crowther's coven, huge student of religion and esoteric material. So I'm a real advocate of the Servants of the Light School. It started back up again and people can join. Its format's a little bit different. But when I started studying Kabbalah, which I didn't know a lot about for years. I mean, I joined in 2000, so that was 25 years ago. How old was I? If I'm 60 now, it's 60 minus 25, 35, 45, 35. Because I felt like there was a pretty big gap. I didn't know the full scope of what was in the Western mystery tradition, the Egyptian mythology, the Hermetic studies that came about with the writings of Hermes Trismegistus in Alexandria, about 200 AD, Gnostic philosophy, esoteric Christianity, all the stuff that came out of the Middle East, during the Dark Ages in the Europe. I don't want to say Dark Ages. I think that's not the right word anymore, but time period, 1000 to 1500 AD. We got shut down by the Catholic Church. And so a lot of material went to Baghdad. It went to the Islamic golden age, I think they say, where astrology, astronomy, medicine, optics, herbal science were all kind of shifted there. Then it came back to the Europe in the Renaissance. But my getting that bigger view of the history of esoteric philosophy helped me, and Kabbalah studies. I mean, I just can't say enough about the framework of the tree of life, the Sephira, the paths. It's such an overarching, big, universal system. I still think it's really relevant. I think it really works. So in studying those things, I learned, European mythology, what we might call classic Hermetic studies, Kabbalah studies, correspondences, ritual magic systems. I learned that in Servants of the Light. I went to a group in Atlanta and learned with that ritual lodge. And so those foundations led me to understand that, well, in the world of witchcraft, when did I first read about it? 78, 79, something like that. It was quite a hodgepodge in the US. Scott Cunningham published Solitary Wicca, and all the books said you can do it on your own. You can choose any pantheons. You can do it any way you'd like to. Here's the basic format. You want to worship these old gods. You're going to have the seasonal Sabbats. You're going to cast the circle, call some kind of elemental quarter, and do your ritual. And anything's fine. We're calling it Wicca. So I didn't, you come into it in that time period, just like you, pre-internet. I went to the library. I got interlibrary loans. I wrote letters to people in England that I wanted to learn from and begged, could you please send me, what is your course? What are you teaching? What are you doing? So I get it that it's so easy now to just click, click, click and see some things, but it's not the same as studying under masters. It's not the same. And that's why I feel strongly about getting human teachers. But I knew then from that time period that the two types of witchcraft that I would really like to do, if I could, would be Gardnerian or Alexandrian, because I do consider that those the foundations of modern religious witchcraft. And that's a whole nother topic. Maybe we could have that later in another Zoom call, right? Most younger people don't know the scope of the topic. They really don't. And it's very emotional. Everyone thinks their way is right and their way is better and their teachers are more evolved. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think people don't know what the hell they're talking about at all about modern witchcraft. There's still the people that say, Margaret Murray's right. It came from prehistory. It's been saved in families. I mean, I think things are saved in the underground stream. I think there are currents that exist, right, in the Akashic records or the inner planes that rise and fall. Humans pick up on that. We can get the seed is there. We can pick it up, let it grow, carry it to the next generation. But so when I started working at Hex Old World Witchery, and I learned that Brian Kane had initiated it as an Alexandrian, and he had an English teacher, and that he had access to Maxine Sanders, I said, wow, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for me. It was just no doubt that I needed to pursue that. It was like a perfect hand in a glove. As you know, Alexandrian witchcraft is very traditional in a lot of ways. The Hermetic sciences are the Western mystery tradition. The symbols are very similar. It's a religion. It's a religion of devotion to the goddess and the god. It's a functional religion. You practice the celebrations of the year, but you're working magic all the time. Even having the gods come into the space with you is the first magic, right? You do that through a ritual, through a process. So I knew that I thought I would like it. You never know, not until you're initiated, and you're probably there about a year. You don't know about it because people don't really, even though some books are published, they are concealing the deepest parts. They really are. That's true in probably the Eleusinian mysteries and all these other mystery schools in ancient Greece and Egypt, where you didn't know until you did it, right? Mm-hmm. So I was so blessed that I was allowed to, and I pursued it a while, about a year. I was, clicking and talking and saying, can I take you out for another glass of wine, please? And finally had the courage to ask. It was pretty scary. And then, of course, my history with it. I think I've been in the New Orleans coven 9 years and 8.5 or 9, and became a 3rd degree maybe 3 years ago. I think it was in the coven 5 years before I attempted to go to the higher rank, because there's quite a bit involved with that, a lot more study. And proficiency in the work. You have to know it, front and back. So, but that's been nothing but learning, to have to be running the coven. Brian Kane runs it. It's his coven, and I'm his high priestess. But he's back and forth to Salem a lot, so I'm in New Orleans, really making sure everything is happening. It's a fabulous opportunity. It's an amazing challenge. I have to read more, research more, think in my own mind. What should I be doing? What does my coven need? What do the gods want me to do? It's pretty intense, but it's the deepest way into the work. And as I say to people when they ask me about Alexandrian witchcraft, it is a correct Hermetic tradition that teaches the great work. It does. It has the tools embedded for the development of the soul of the self into a more perfected state. And there are other systems. Ritual magic has some ways there. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn taught that system, or a system to do that. A lot of Eastern religions have that built in, that we're really working on the soul. But that's the problem with eclectic witchcraft. It doesn't have the system built in because somebody didn't know the system of doing the great work and didn't include it in the philosophy. And so I find a lot of people who do the hodgepodge Wicca, or even are in a great coven with people that are sincere. I'm not saying people aren't horribly sincere. They are. But they're missing something that they don't know. They know something's missing, but they don't know what it is. They can't quite pull it all together. And I do think Alexandrian witchcraft absolutely has the technology embedded in the system to do the great work, to perfect the self.
And also considering, your background's, my background's a little bit similar to yours, even though I haven't dived into as many subjects as you have, but in particular the Hermetics, the Kabbalah, and now I'm going to get more and more interested in the astrology. But to me, Alexandrian, I haven't really explored Gardnerian, but Alexandrian, there's something about it that able to sort of pull all these threads of my interests all together.
Yes.
And I think that's the beauty of it. And this is why one of the reasons why I got reinitiated was because it was always around me. It was just something that just sung to my soul. And I can't explain to anybody else.
Right. It's beautiful, elegant, rich, artistically beautiful. And Maxine says, because when Alex and she split, and they had really run the Manchester coven, the London coven, and developed Alexandrian witchcraft a little differently from Gardnerian witchcraft. That was really the seed, and they built on it. They built a bigger garden. Fundamentally, it's not different, but it's evolved or enlarged. She stayed in London with their coven, and she said, no, we're not stopping. We're going to get better and better and better. This is what we're doing. And she says this in her interview with Brian in WitchCon. She says, we went back into the rituals. We practiced over and over and over. We found the beautiful cadence, the right step, the arm motion, the way we have our altar set up. Everything developed through practice over and over for the most beauty, the most elegance, the most functional. And I think it's true. I think it is. I think when you see it, you can't know it until you initiate and do it, which is kind of the hard spot. Do I really want to do it? You don't know until you do it. You get in there, but it's of the stars.
Yes, and you've also sort of touched on another aspect that I suppose in our modern world, we're so used to having everything and having the knowledge of everything, and especially the initiatory traditions, is bringing us back to that place where you just have to trust that it's right for you, do your own research, be the seeker and seek as much as you can, and then listen to yourself, because you will know if you are drawn to it, or as in your case, sometimes it's the only tradition available to give you that entrance to it. And you did mention something, and I just thought I would like to hear your thoughts on it, because every now and then it sort of comes up with a bit of a hotbed topic. You mentioned the Kabbalah, and I also have an interest in the Kabbalah. And then some people put it together with the label of cultural appropriation. So do you think using the Kabbalah, because we're using it in a magical sense, we're not using it in a religious sense, do you see that as a form of cultural appropriation, or is it not the sense?
Well, it's probably both. The spellings are different. Kabbalah with a K is the traditional Jewish spelling, I believe, or a westernized English. And Kabbalah in the Hebrew tradition is not everyone looks at it as a positive thing. It's kind of boxed in. It's for men, and you have to be over 40 years old to study it. It's not offered to women in its traditional start of its development. I mean, really, in the Spanish 1100s, 1200s is when these writers really sort of put it all down on paper. Before that time period, we just have fragments and we don't really know. But in, I think, 1100, we have some of the first. We have Sefer Yetzirah, the Zohar, really being pulled together and published. So there's that. There is so I obviously am not studying traditional Jewish Kabbalah. I'm not Jewish. I'm not a man. Yeah, I am over 40. But when I started, I was 35, so I wouldn't have been allowed to do that. There is Kabbalah with a C, which I think means something else, and then Kabbalah with a Q, right? Or something like that. So there's the westernized way. Eliphas Levi, well, let's go back before him. Paracelsus used Kabbalah material that he had access to. Agrippa used Kabbalah material that he had access to. And then from then on, philosophy and metaphysical writers were learning Kabbalah and flavoring it more towards Christianity than Judaism. So is that an appropriation right there? Yes, actually, it probably was taking something from another culture and then claiming I am an expert, I'm teaching it, it's part of my world, is what someone explained to me, that appropriation is not that you know about something from another culture, but you take it and say, it's mine, I own it, I'm a master, I'm teaching it or making money off of it. That's really appropriation. So yeah, probably in the 1600s, it was really strongly appropriated. Today, though, it's embedded in so much Western material, Western esoteric material. You don't even know it until you learn Kabbalah. You don't see how influential it is. So today, I don't think it's appropriation. But I do think you should know its roots and its history and its proper lineages. I mean, I think there are some lineages with it, so that you can talk about what happened to the philosophy, how it was used and by whom over time, instead of just saying, oh, I'm a Kabbalist, I know all about it, this is blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical about people that come off that way in the first place, right? Like they know more than everyone else and they have special abilities. That's kind of the red flag of they've been drinking too much Kool-Aid. So I've thought about appropriation, and back to that your previous question. In New Orleans, we have so much opportunity. Absolutely conjure and hoodoo, absolutely voodoo, Haitian voodoo, African voodoo, South American voodoo. We also have Santeria, Ifa, Kimbande, Pale Mayumbe, everything. All the types of witchcraft are here. There's an Amark Rosicrucian order here. There's a OTO lodge here. I don't know if there's Golden Dawn groups, but certainly people here are studying Golden Dawn material. There's astrology clubs. There's herbalism people. I mean, it's here, and it's here authentically. People gravitate here, I think, magically because it's such an interesting city. But I know these people. I know whether people are properly trained and they're authentic or not. It's really here. I just always, like I said, I go back to my childhood. The Egyptian and the Greek and Roman gods were in my bedroom with me. So those are my people, and that's my way. Maybe because I'm German and Scottish genetically, maybe because I'm white European, descendant. But I know lots of great people that are genetically, European and who are studying voodoo. I don't think that's wrong if you're sincere and if you have great teachers and if the tradition accepts you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's not us, it's gods that want to come through. I know, I mean, I have really no true interest in voodoo or that way. And I'm saying that way because all the other sort of like similar traditions like that. But
yes, right.
every year I do what I call the Yamaya blessing of the waters, because I found, I mean, I was reading about what happens, I think it's Brazil. I really like that idea. I've always been devotional. And then it's almost like, and sometimes I feel a bit funny about talking about this, but I'm quite sure you understand. Sometimes I feel like I'm a gateway, a portal for the gods if they want their word out there. And I thought, well, she wanted some sort of ritual, some sort of annual rite for us to be a bit more aware of our waterways. And we've got a beach here, and it's just like, I'm not duplicating what they do in Brazil. I wouldn't know how to do that. I do it my own way, but it's in honor of her. So, yeah.
Do you
So,
believe that the God forms are actually individual beings, or do you conglomerate them more to say goddess of, like we would, like I'm just saying, we have the idea of goddess of water. Yemaya is in New Orleans so strongly. She is worshipped here by a lot of groups and people that make her more strong here. And so, yes, I know her. I see her. I accidentally, she's not part of my natural pantheon, but I certainly respect her and would recognize her presence. So do you think they really, I mean, I think they are all individuals, not just lumped into like goddess of the water, like Aphrodite, or who are some other water goddesses?
there's there's ones with just I'm seeing the names beginning of S. There's like a English one. I mean, like seeing a lot of the water, a lot of our rivers are actually named is it beyond
Right.
of the rivers are actually named after them. I find it really interesting. I think almost that we have the sort of like an overall, us humans, we like to box things up, but I definitely think Yamaya is completely, there's similarities. I mean, also she's a mother goddess. And she, and that's very strong as well. But she's not the same as Isis in particular.
Right.
Both
right.
mother goddesses. I'm not the same as Gaia. Definitely not the same as Gaia.
Right.
We can say the goddess, and I think there is a goddess. But then I also think that maybe they are part of, but yet separate. I don't know if that makes. It's almost like I heard this, the Taoists. So cosmology, first there was one, then there was the two, then there was the 10,000. They're all part of the whole, whatever the whole is, but then they are all separate and individual. I see them almost like individual bottles, shall we say, with their different shapes and sizes. And the more that we give our conscious awareness to the shapes, to the imagery that we see. I'm looking behind me with Sekhmet and Isis. I've got Taret. I've even just, we've got little sort of like normal goddess sort of statues, but then like with Taret, we've got like specific imagery. The more that we focus on the specific imagery, it's like, we talk about the egregore. We're adding into that.
Yes.
And that sort of reinvigorates their true essence so they can manifest in their true essence.
I agree. I think it's an egregore or an overarching being like goddess versus God. But I don't want to lump them all together. I think they're very unique and different beings, and I respect them and worship them individually. And I really try to focus and read and meditate on the gods I work with a lot, so that I'm really focusing on them and not just generalizing.
And
I don't like that. I think it's too weak.
And some of them aren't open to everybody. Or you, I know in particular, and also it comes down to personal, I think, personal knowledge as well. I mean, I'm living on a country where we have the oldest continual living races of people, the Aboriginal people. I would not even remotely consider working with even the local Indigenous gods and goddesses unless I had a properly trained elder and permission to do so.
Right.
I don't think that they are, it's just my experience, they have their own sort of magics or energy to it And I think also, I mean, I don't know, it could be similar in America as well, due to the history of colonialization of the indigenous peoples. They don't want, they're very, well, they just want to do their own thing and stick to, and don't want to get involved. Yet, if you show respect to the land, they will, I suppose it's also like divas and fays, if you show respect and reverence, and if they want to, it's very much on their terms, then they will make their presence known. And I've had that like around the world, especially throughout Europe and England, burial mounds and things like that, where they're the local spirits there. And it's not just taking a crystal. I find that, destroying something out of Mother Earth. It's taking something of yourself, which is usually your time, or some water, or some honey, if you want to get in touch with the fae, and just sitting and just being and being open, and then also acknowledging that, hey, maybe they just don't want to say hello to you, which is doing things.
Yeah, I think it's their right. And I think back to that point about, is it a being of the land? And there are beings of the land, you and I both understand that, of all types, the elementals, the fae beings, the gnomes, to the genus loci, maybe even to a larger egregore of a particular place. I think it is possible to come in contact with those beings of the land if you're on the land. You'll get to know them, you'll see it, you'll sense them. But there's other deities that, like the celestial or the chthonic, that are of such a large space, not so much localized. Those are the ones particularly that I'm like, they're just going to look down at you, little peanut, and say, nope, not having you, not interested in you, don't like you, don't care about you. You're a dum-dum, not doing it. So but that's where you go back to ground zero when you say, I like you, God, goddess, and I'm trying to get to know you better. And I'm going to keep showing up with offerings and prayer work and time and effort. Sometimes year after year. And finally, they kind of feel sorry for you. And they're like, all right, fine, come on over. I'll show you some things. But I do think the land beings, you would get to, as people colonized, they wouldn't have known those genus loci, in the first place, but they would have gotten to know them, I think, over time. They'd be probably hard not to. It's still in a matter of acceptance, though. The land, and we have a saying in New Orleans, she, Our Lady of New Orleans, doesn't let everyone stay. You have to go through, I've heard this from so many locals, you've definitely got to go through a 3-year testing period where she's either going to let you stay or kick you out. And I see this happen all the time, especially the big wigs that come here and they're like, I'm going to change this city. I'm going to get everything straightened out. I'm going to, and I look at them and I'm like, oh, bless your heart. You're about to get your ass handed to you by Our Lady of New Orleans. But then I've been here 12 years. So at the 10-year mark, I finally felt like I've just scratched the surface, but I'm honored to be allowed to stay. At the 3-year mark, I felt I'd stay. I could stay. I felt accepted. But at the 10-year mark, I felt legitimately able to live here and be here. I bought my house 3 years ago, so that was a big milestone of the city really accepting me, the land accepting me. Yeah, so it's going to not accept people that aren't right, that don't fit in, that have bad attitudes. It's just going to get you run over by a bus real quick.
I think the same can also be said, say, with witchcraft or magical traditions as well. We see the peripheral, I call it a commercialization of witchcraft happening. I mean, I don't want to sort of dish on people. I do markets with my beading work. I see more and more, can I say, cheaply imported products coming in. People just honing on the aesthetics, which is all well and good. We all like beautiful things, but it also carries down to, I mean, I picked this up in a shop in, I think, in Perth on the other side of the country. It's a handcrafted, it's called Ishtar, and it's called clavicles on the bottom of it. So it's handcrafted. Somebody's handcrafted this. And I guess, and it's beautiful. And I can't remember what it cost me. Even my little tarat. Okay, this was from one of the hawkers in Egypt, but I've got really like tarat.
But it is made in Egypt. I have a lot of things I bought in Egypt that you could tell, and we gravitated towards people that we thought would tell us more honestly. Is it imported and a label stuck on it?
Mm.
or is it made here? And we went to factories. On my tour, we went to plate manufacturing. They weren't factories. They were handmade centers of clay, stone, tile, fabric, where we saw it being made and we could buy something there. I tended to lean towards those things. But yeah, you're right. The commercialization of magic, it's heartbreaking. I think that's why you and I have both committed to teach and guide and show up. We have these beautiful young people, no matter what their age, they might be new to the occult, and they come into a vastly giant world of bit data points on TikTok. And they have no idea. They're attracted to some things. They have energy feelings, but they really don't know the big picture. So I'm a huge advocate for studying the Western system historically. So you know what happened in 2000 BC up to today. You know the general history, the people, the language, the practices. You're just going to be able to fit things into that structure better. But I think it's so important. We're losing, I don't know what we're losing, but we're gaining just like this hodgepodge of junky, printed on a 3D printer god in a country out of a horrible plastic that's bad for the earth and made by an evil overlord empire moneymaker. I mean, that's just got to be wrong, right? It's got to be wrong.
And it has no soul. At the
No
end of the
soul.
day, it has no soul. And it's just like, but I suppose in a way it suits the purpose, because what we were saying earlier, when you pass the probational periods of magical traditions, whether it's within a coven or personal, before the gods come and talk to you, by that time, if you're not authentic, that's a word that everybody throws around these days, but if it doesn't suit your soul, you'll find something else bright and shiny. But it's for the ones who will come back and say, okay, this I know I bought at a market for $10. I like it. It resonates to me on some level. I want to go deeper, but in order to go deeper, I need to now invest a little bit more, and not necessarily money, but it could be time, research, and also, and this is one thing that I like about the tradition that we both share, is that it tells us, get inside of you and get to know you. And that's probably the scariest thing. Everybody else is chasing demons and woo-woo stuff externally. It's getting to know you, which is, I think, is the biggest.
It's the hardest work. And I tell people all the time, just if you need to do some demon work, look at yourself, look at your inner horribleness, your tackiness, your pettiness, your greediness. Look at that. That's all the demon you need. And so I agree. It's terrifying. And people don't want to do it. They want to bypass it. They want to go right to the go button. I'm an occultist. I'm a magician. I'm a witch. You can spot it. You can spot a better quality person who spent a lot of time and personal effort on it. That's what I like.
And it's an ongoing journey. I mean, I've been, for me, it's almost 30 years, around 30 years. And I'm finding really interesting. It's almost like peeling back an onion. So I think, oh, I've done my shadow work. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. That's
new layers, new chambers, new rooms. I'm surprised so much. I say to myself, oh, I never knew that before. I never saw that before. Oh my God, I'm so excited to know about, whatever, some sort of facet of, is this true? I just saw some stories today on Egypt that it is correct that the LIDAR and terrestrial imaging systems have found massive structures under the middle pyramid at Giza, columns that are meters long with chambers underneath. I'm just seeing these stories in the last 24 hours.
I've been asleep.
So, but maybe it's height, but I don't know yet. I mean, it'll filter out, but don't you believe? I believe that human civilizations have been wiped out, and that the pyramids and the Sphinx are 30 or 40,000 years old. They are not 7,000 years old. That's just ridiculous.
No. And they go far back, and they say that really, for what's been excavated in Egypt, that's just a fraction. There's so much there that, it's much.
And they don't want to let out, because it flies in the face of the history that we've been taught for the last 100 years. And I've always thought psychically number one, that aliens are beings from different dimensions and they are here and they do influence humanity. I don't think they fly on ships necessarily and they look like lizards. I'm not sure about that, but they're way scarier than lizards. That we've been on the planet a million years, modern humans, and we've been wiped out almost to extinction and come back up again. And that there is older material that's intellectual, spiritual, scientific, and is probably, probably hundreds of thousands of years old. And that's what I'm interested in right now. I believe that is kept in the Akashic records, the knowledge base that we have access to psychically, that's there. How do we get to it? How do we validate it when we see it? How do we cross-reference or check it? That's one of the things I'm working on with trying to do my remote viewing in really more ancient times to try to see what similarities I find, like when I do it here in New Orleans, it's all the American Indians, that's what's here. And that's back for thousands and thousands of years. Their knowledge of land, the way they worked, what they ate, how they thought about the world around them. That's what I've been working, trying to see that. Yeah,
and there's been discoveries, I don't know how recent, that have indicated that your indigenous peoples have been there longer than what people have thought they were. And when it comes back to Egypt, well, you look at the kings list at Abydos, you look at in the Turin kings list, that's, I think it's in France or Italy or something like that. And they talk about the gods and they talk about the sort of in-between beings before they talk about the human kings. So it's just like very interesting. You look at the stories. I mean, Graham Hancock in his Ancient Apocalypse, he looked at the myths that were carved in stone. And there's so much there. But Elie, we are running out of time. It's very unfortunate because we can go down so many rabbit holes. I just want to mention, you have a website if people want to get in touch with you. You are a reader available in New Orleans, but your herbs and your herb craft and your workshops are also available as well. So your website is?
It is eliebarnespsychic.com. That's 1LELIEBARNES, psychic, PSYCHIC.com. I have an email there that if anybody goes to that website, you can send me an email and I get it. I know the system works and I can answer and I can direct you to what you might want help with, whether it's readings or buy herb things. I do work at Hex in the city in the French Quarter, and I'm there 3 days a week, and that's pretty reliable. You can call the shop and get a reading usually within a couple of days. But I'm doing a lot more teaching and workshops. Like tonight, we're having people over, about 20 people. I'm having a beautiful guest from Seattle who's a master herbalist, a friend of mine. So I said, well, since you're coming over, do you mind if we do a talk and then show people that are interested? I had so many people respond that I had to really reorganize and move furniture around and go to the grocery and clean house a little bit deeper. So there's all kind of stuff going on, and I love to share and teach. So I'm out there. You can find me on my website, and whatever you need, you can ask, and I will help direct you to what you need. Maybe it's not me, but if I can show you a thing that you'd be good to go to, I obviously do that. I'm not, well, I won't say I'm not controlling. I am kind of bossy, but I want people to find their true way. But I also want to direct people to the best they can get. Right?
Oh, wonderful.
So yes, and we'll have Hex Fest in August. I'll be teaching there. That's in New Orleans. Readings online, products you can find and buy from me or from Hex, and other shops carry my herb work. And you can come see me in person, Frances. You can too. You've been here.
Yes, and it's a wonderful experience, and I've got to come back.
Well, let's do part two. Let's do part two. When you've made a round with all the wonderful people you're talking to on your podcast, let's do round two at some time in the future.
That would be perfect. But I'm going to have to end it now because I know you've got to get ready for this wonderful event. And that was something in other, because your herbal training wasn't the Scott Cunningham's, it was the Rev Paul Beyerl. So
Rev Paul Beyerl, master herbalism and medical herbalism. But because he was a witch and has his own tradition, I went to him and said, I want to do magical herbalism. And he said, Well, you'll have to do some medical. You need to know how the herb is made and how we use it. But he helped me and develop a system of teaching for the magical side. And he passed away. So unfortunately, he's not available to me, but his systems are here. His work is here. And I have bought that and have that and use it all the time. Use it all the time.
Yeah. And also his books are available too.
Books.
So I'll put all the links below this recording, because a lot of people are sort of more familiar with other herbalist books, but this is probably better.
Magical stuff. The two main books you're going to show are magical references. So if you want to use herbs and magic, those are just go-to books. I also recommend Karen Harrison's something alchemy. Sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head. I just call it Karen Harrison. I use her. I use a ton of books, hundreds of books, but Paul Beyerl's my main guy. Love him.
Yeah,
Master, 40 years. But reach out, find me, and look for me on YouTube, Elie Barnes Psychic on YouTube. I'm making all kind of silly videos about my predictions of the end times and how we live through it and how it gets better.
Yeah, so that's wonderful.
Thank you, Fran.
That's
so
all right.
glad you.
Thank you for talking about the magic in you, Miss Elie Barnes.
I'll see you again, Frances. Thank you so much. Okay.
Blessings.